So now Krishna will speak about Varnashram. So you want to first hear about Vanaprastha ashram or Grihastha ashram? Anyway, I'll start with Vanaprastha ashram. Prepare you for that. And then we'll go into the responsibilities of Grihastha ashram. So first Krishna is speaking about the Varnas. The description of Varnashram system. In Satyuga, there was only one Varna. Or one social order. And that order was known as Hamsa. In Satyuga, there was no Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra as such. There was only one social order. And that was known as Hamsa. And in that age, men were naturally engaged in pure devotional service. Everyone was automatically dedicated to pure devotional service. And since everyone was perfect, that age was known as, what's the other name of Satyuga? Krita Yuga. Because everyone was perfect at that age, it was known as Krita Yuga. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, people used to perceive Him in the heart through the process of meditation. Like, they were so pure that they could see the Lord in the heart. And however, in Treta Yuga, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in Treta Yuga, created the four Varnas. Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita, Chatur Varna Maya Shrishta Guna Karma Vibhaga. So here we can see in Satyuga, because everyone was completely pure. Everyone was worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the effect of guna and karma was not so diverse. Everyone was completely absorbed in pure devotional service. And by nature, they were naturally austere. They were naturally situated in meditation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in Treta Yuga, the division started. 4 Varnas and ashrams which prescribe material and spiritual duties for the different members of the society. And how this Varna were divided, Varna Vibhag was made, as Krishna mentioned, Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Guna. How many gunas are there in the material nature? 3 gunas. Satagun, Rajagun and Tamagun. So those who are influenced by the mode of goodness, what is their nature like? What is their natural characteristic like? They are naturally spiritually inclined. they are spiritually inclined. Therefore, they are Brahmanas. Then, those who are influenced by the mode of passion, what was their nature like? Mode of goodness leads one to knowledge. Mode of passion leads to action. When people become active, it is due to the mode of passion. And when one is influenced by the mode of passion, then what one naturally wants to do? He wants to enjoy. Not only the human beings are influenced by the modes, even the animals are influenced by the modes. Which animal is influenced by the mode of goodness? Cow. And have you noticed the nature of the cow? What is the nature of the cow? So peaceful, so gentle. Just eats grass and gives milk, the most valuable product. Takes nothing and gives the greatest benefit. That's the mode of goodness. And which animal is in the mode of passion? Lion. So have you seen the nature of a lion? Just compare the nature of a cow and a lion. Completely different. This is how the modes influence the living entities. In mode of goodness, one becomes peaceful, gentle, thoughtful, meditative, withdrawn, yet rendering the greatest benefit. Whereas in the mode of passion, one is trying to get whatever he wants. At the same time, he is noble. Look at the nature of a lion. Lion is very noble animal actually. A lion will not kill any other animal if it's not hungry. If the lion is not hungry, lion won't attack any other animal. Rather, lion will give protection. So Kshatriyas are like that. The word Kshatriya means Kshatat Trayate iti Kshatriya. Kshat means injury. The one who protects the society and the members of the society from injury is a Kshatriya. The Kshatriya gives protection. In one hand, he wants to enjoy, but at the same time, he is there to give protection. Whoever surrenders to him, he says, don't worry, I will give you protection. He will even give his life to protect that subordinate who has taken shelter of him. And that is a real Kshatriya. In one hand, they have a very, very intense desire to enjoy, but at the same time, they are there to give protection. And he is a very valiant, heroic. He is very powerful and he is fearless. That is a Kshatriya. And then there are some people, those who are in a mixed mode of passion and ignorance. Those who are in a mixed mode of passion and ignorance, due to passion, they want to enjoy. But because of the influence of ignorance, they don't have that courage and strength of a Kshatriya. Therefore, what they do, they want to enjoy. You see the difference between a Vaishya and a Kshatriya. Vaishya also wants to enjoy. That is a person in a mixed mode of passion and ignorance. But he will buy what he wants to enjoy. With money he will get it. Whereas a Kshatriya will, with his strength he'll get it. Like you have seen in Mahabharata especially, a Kshatriya prince likes a girl, likes a princess. And he'll go and pick her up. And it won't be easy for him. He won't steal the girl in the middle of the night. He'll do it in the broad daylight when everyone is around. And his mood will be, okay, I'm claiming her. If anybody wants, he can stop me. And he'll fight. He'll fight. And by defeating others in that battle, he would claim his princess. Like you have seen Arjun, you have seen Krishna, you have seen Bhishma. He of course didn't get these three girls, Amba, Ambika and Ambalika for himself. He got them for his brother, Vichitravirya. Brother was young, and so he went and he claimed. He said, look, I am Bhishma, son of Shantanu. I have a brother. So for my brother, I am claiming these three girls. If anyone wants, he can stop me. He can try to stop me. And that's what happened. He picked up these three girls on his chariot, and as he drove, the others attacked him, surrounding him. And Bhishma alone fought with all of them and defeated them. Others, those who attacked him, they were all powerful, Kshatriyas also. But Bhishma defeated them all. Similarly, when Krishna kidnapped Rukmini, same thing happened. Arjun claimed Subhadra, same thing happened. He fought. And Subhadra was driving the chariot, expressing her acceptance of Arjun. Like these are the Kshatriyas. But a Vaishya doesn't really have that kind of strength and valor. Therefore, Vaishya makes money. How does he make money? You know what is the definition of business according to Vedic definition? Making profit by catering to the needs of the society. You make your money, a Vaishya is meant to make money, but catering to the need of the society. The society needs food. A Vaishya will supply that. Krishi, by cultivation of land. He will supply food, Goraksha. And he will bring things from different parts of the world and then sell them. He'll buy things or he'll get things from a place where it costs nothing, and he'll bring it to the place where it costs a hell of a lot, I'm sorry. Where it costs a lot of money. So that is a Vaishya occupation. Krishi, Goraksha and Vanijya, business. Business is you get the thing where it's necessary, where it's needed, and make your profit. They would bring things like simple things like salt. Like they would go to the ocean where there is abundance of salt, And they'll bring the salt and bring it to the inland. In inland you don't get salt. And they would salt costed him nothing. And he would sell them at a very high price. So this is the Banijya, business, trading. But unfortunately, what is today's definition of business? Let's see what actually happened. Catering to the demand. What are the demand of the society? Food, clothes, jewelries, etc. But now what they're doing? They're creating an artificial demand through the publicity, advertisements, through the media. They're creating artificial demand and they're selling their product. They're making the product and creating a demand for that, and they're making their profit. And you know what is the modern day definition of business? The actual definition of business is catering to the demand of the society, catering to the need of the society and make profit. Today's definition of business is a noble art of cheating people. It's a noble art of cheating people. They're cheating people, but they're legally cheating people. And more expert you are in cheating, better businessman you are. And catering to the demand of the society. And what has become the biggest demand in today's society? Meat, intoxication, prostitution, and gambling. From that you can see what's the state of affairs of this world. 4 sinful activities have become the biggest business. So this is how it shows that how society is degrading. And that's why there is such a need of properly establishing the Varnashram system. So Vaishya caters to the need of the society, and they are needed. Somebody has to bring what we need in the society. They are bringing it. And then Sudras, they do not have the independent ability. They don't have the ability to become independently engaged. Therefore, they have to function under others. Especially for higher classes, they are actually catering to the need. Brahmin, in this way, Vaishyas or Sudras act under the guidance of either a Brahman or Kshatriya or a Vaishya. So Brahmana, then it comes to the Brahmachari order. So member of the higher class, that means Brahman, Kshatriya and Vaishya, they will accept initiation. They will accept a bona fide spiritual master and take initiation. Sacred thread he'll get at that time. Jagga Upavita. They should go to live in the Guru, and then they should go to the Gurukula to live with the Guru and receive instructions from the spiritual master. With a pacified mind, the student should absorb himself in study of the Vedas. He gets initiated, becomes qualified to study the Vedas. And by studying the Vedas, he receives the knowledge, and then only he is qualified as a Brahmana. Brahma janati iti Brahmana. one who has received the spiritual knowledge, he is a Brahmana. He must regularly perform worship at the three junctions of the day. Brahmanas chant Gayatri 3 times a day. Morning, these 3 times are called sandhas. The conjunction, 3 conjunctions. When night is turning to day, 1 sandha. When forenoon is turning into afternoon, 2nd sandha. And when the day is turning to night, that's the 3rd sandha. So in these three sandhas, he should perform his worship of the Lord by chanting the mantra. Dhayan stubang stasya jasas trishandham bande guru shri charanam. So brahmachari life has been described here. Such a pure life. He accepts for his maintenance whatever remnants of the Lord he is granted. He should render menial service to the spiritual master by massaging his feet and worshipping him, and should avoid all sense gratification and strictly maintain the vow of celibacy. With his mind, body and words, he should worship the Supreme Lord in the form of the Super Soul in the way prescribed for him. For brahmacharis, seeing or touching women and conversation or sports in the company of women are absolutely disallowed. Everyone is also advised to always remember that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Super Soul dwelling within the hearts of all. So anyone who wants to make spiritual advancement must remember that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is residing in everyone's heart. And with that understanding, he should deal with everyone. When we deal with each other with that understanding, then naturally peace and prosperity will prevail. Our attitude towards others will become most respectful. People speak of non-violence, but real non-violence will be possible only when we see the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in everyone's heart. Otherwise, it's simple body consciousness. After studying different aspects of the Vedas, a Brahmana who has material desires may take permission from a spiritual master and enter family life. Otherwise, if he has no material desire, he may become a Vanaprastha or a sannyasi. The proper order of succession should be followed in changing from one spiritual order to the next. Okay, now the instructions on householders. So it is from brahmachari life is entering into household life. Not bachelor life to household life. And one who wishes to enter the household order should accept a wife who is of the same social class, who is not objectionable and who is somewhat younger in age. Wife should be younger in age. The obligatory duties of the three classes were twice born, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, are worship of the Lord, study of the Vedas, and giving in charity. Three higher classes, the worship of the Lord, study of the Vedas, and giving in charity. Occupational duties of accepting charity, teaching others and performing sacrifice for others are the privilege of the Brahmanas alone. Brahmana's duty is to accept charity, teach and perform sacrifice for others. And Brahmana's occupation has been described as Pathan, Pathan, Jajan, Jajan, Dan, Pratigraha. Pathan, study. Pathan, teach. Jajan, performing sacrifices. And conduct sacrifices. Giving in charity and also accepting charity. If a Brahmana considers that his existence by collecting grains from the fields, that his consciousness is contaminated by engaging in these occupations, he may sustain his existence by collecting grains from the field. Some Brahmana would not even want to take such help from others, mainly Kshatriyas and Vaishyas or Vaishyas. Sometimes they may consider that why should I take money from anybody? Like the way Raghunath Das Goswami felt. His father was sending a lot of money. And he considered, why should I take money from my father? After all, he's a materialist. And taking money from him will contaminate my consciousness. Although with this money he was feeding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other Vaishnavas, but he stopped taking money. So in this way, at some stage, a Brahmana may not want to take such help from the others. At that stage, what will he do? What should he do? He will just go collect grains from the field. Now, what kind of grains you get in the field? After harvesting, the grains that are lying in the field, he picks them up. It's called Unchabritti. Some Brahmanas were like that. Prabhupada mentioned that Chanakya was such a Brahmana. Prabhupada also said that in today's world, Chanakya was actually the last Brahmana. He was very upright, very determined, very learned, and very detached. He made a king, he made Chandragupta the king. But when he saw that he became a little disrespectful towards him, he left. And when Chanakya's guidance was not there, Chandragupta's dynasty fell apart. That is the support of a Brahmana. In the Vedic time, the kings used to be guided by the Brahmanas. They would guide them so much so that even when they would go to a battle, they would guide, no, this is not the right time, don't go now. They were so wise that they could even they knew perfect astrological science. And from the astrology they could figure out what would be the outcome. They said, don't go into it. Wait for your time. And then he would guide him in an auspicious moment. Okay, now go and fight it. So when somebody has someone to guide like that, life becomes so much easier. Therefore, the Kshatriyas in the early India were always guided by the Brahmanas. Ministers were all Brahmanas. Srila Prabhupada also, when he went to meet Indira Gandhi, Prabhupada also proposed that make only the Brahmanas the ministers. Prabhupada also meant that in India there is no Brahmana. Only he was making some Brahmanas in ISKCON. The real Brahmanas you find only in ISKCON. So what Prabhupada actually meant, let the ISKCON devotees become the ministers. Prabhupada didn't say that. I mean, I'm just concluding. Real Brahmanas, not some caste Brahmanas. Prabhupada was very critical about, I mean, I'm sure there are some Brahmanas here, please don't mind. Prabhupada used to give an example, very proud, I'm a Brahmana. See my Brahmin thread. But what I'm doing, I'm a clerk in somebody's office. Or in some cases, Prabhupada also pointed out that in Calcutta there is a big marketplace called Bada Bazaar. In Bada Bazaar you find some thelawalas. They carry the push cart. They pull the push cart. He's wearing a Brahmin thread and working as a labor. That is not Brahmana. Brahmana means according to qualification. Qualification means one who is an expert in Vedic wisdom. That is the quality of a Brahmana. The quality of a Brahmana again has been pointed out here. A Brahmana who is properly fixed in his personal duty rejects all insignificant material desires, always serves the Vaishnavas, and is under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The householder should study the Vedas every day and maintain his words with money honestly earned by his own occupation. As far as possible, he should execute the worship of the Lord by ritual sacrifices. Remaining unattached to material life and fixed in devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a householder may finally take the order of Banaprastha so that he can fully involve himself in the Lord's worship. If he has a grown son, he may directly take the renounced order of life. Okay, so I go to the next chapter now. Varnashram is continuing. In this chapter, Krishna is actually describing the duties of a Vanaprastha and Sannyas. Ready to hear? Well, maybe I should tell you before that, to relieve you from your anxiety. The Vanaprastha order that has been prescribed here is not possible for this age. Like yesterday, the question actually came up about how should one take Banaprastha. And I remember I pointed out that in this age, accepting Banaprastha means joining ISKCON temple. But then also there is a criteria that you must remember. When you join ISKCON temple, make sure that all your bank balance goes to ISKCON. Why I'm saying it? Because one quite a wealthy person came and joined Mayapur when Prabhupada was here. And Prabhupada asked, when we reported, not I was there, someone reported to Prabhupada that such and such person, very wealthy, he was a jeweler, joined ISKCON. Prabhupada asked, did he bring his money with him? Then he said, no, Srila Prabhupada didn't give any donation so far. Then Prabhupada said, then he is not serious. And then Prabhupada pointed out that all my money is for my wife and children and me for ISKCON. Let ISKCON take my burden. And whatever I have, let my wife and children enjoy them. That's not serious. And Prabhupada predicted that he won't last for long. And true enough, of course Prabhupada said it can never go wrong. And after a few days, his wife and children came and he gave up his Banaprastha and went back. So Banaprastha should be an attitude, not where we are. It should be an attitude. I am offering myself to Krishna. Okay, when you are in household life, you have certain material responsibilities. You have to earn money, you have to save money. But when you are living your household life, then what? Then whatever you have accumulated should go to Krishna. Whatever you have should go to Krishna. And people used to do that. People used to give so much. That recently, one quite an insignificant temple in South India, when the government officials started to assess their assets, they found tons of gold, millions of dollars worth of jewelries. I'm sure you all read that. So this is, where did it come from? Because people donated to Krishna. So that is the attitude of a real devotee. It's Krishna's, not mine. So when one takes to Banaprastha order, one should offer one's wealth also to Krishna. One who is taking to the Banaprastha stage should leave his wife. He should leave his wife at home in the care of his sons. Or else take her along and with a peaceful mind spend the third quarter of his life in the forest. Third quarter means the human life, duration of human life is 100 years. Divided by 4, 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100. Panchashodhe Vanang Brojet. After you become 50 years old, go to forest. Meaning, accept Banaprasth. Should I ask you just something out of curiosity? How many of you are above 50 here? Does it say something? It's time to hit the forest path. With your money, with your bank balance. Okay. Make sure. Panchashodhe Vanam Brojet. So first quarter is 20 up to 25, second quarter, third quarter 50 to 75, one should spend in this way. Either alone or along with his wife, he should go to the forest. He should bathe I'm just going to some important part. Many other things, I don't want to scare you. He should bathe 3 times daily in cold water and sleep on the ground. Where? Not in your bedroom floor, but in the forest. Lord Ramchandra did that. When he went to the forest, the first night, Lakshman collected some dry leaves, put them together, and Ramchandra slept on them. A prince living on a bed like that, just some leaves. During the hot season, he should stand beneath the fearsome heat of the sun with fire blazing on 4 sides. During the rainy seasons, he should stand in the midst of the downpour of rain. And during the cold winter, he should submerge himself in water up to his neck. So this is how one actually frees himself from the attachment of the body. They were so powerful individuals that they could do that. In this age, it won't be possible. And that is why all these processes are not important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave a very simple process. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama iva kevalam, phalo nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatinam. Grihe thako, bone thako, sada hari bolira. Whether you are staying at home or whether you are staying in the forest, chant the holy name of the Lord. So isn't it a very simple process? We don't really have to go through all that. Now, do you want to hear about a sannyas? Actually, I feel embarrassed to read that. Anyway, we have to be honest. The 4th order of life is meant for sannyas. That means generally 75 to 100. One should develop complete detachment from attaining residence on different planets, up to Brahmaloka. He should not have any desire for elevation to higher planetary systems for greater sense gratification. That is the main point. Sannyasi should not be interested at all in any kind of sense gratification, even in the higher planetary systems. Such wishes for material elevations are due to desire of fruits of material activity. When one recognizes that endeavors to achieve residence on higher planets ultimately award only suffering, then it is enjoined that one should take to sannyas in a spirit of renunciation. The process of accepting sannyas involves worshipping the Lord with sacrifice, giving everything one possesses in charity to the priests, and establishing within one's own heart the various sacrificial fires. Niragnir nachakriya. From within, he actually cultivates the sacrificial fire, not externally by performing sacrifices. His whole existence becomes a sacrifice. That is a real sannyas. Except in emergencies. For a sannyasi, association with women or even the sight of women is more undesirable than taking poison. Do you remember when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked to meet King Prataparudra? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentioned that. Why? Because Prataparudra, it's not only the association of a woman, but it is the association of one who associates with women also. So that's why Mahaprabhu rejected. No, I can't. Rather, for a sannyasi, it is better to even drink poison than see the face of a king. Because the kings are considered to be in an enjoying spirit. Except in emergencies, the sannyasi should never wear more clothing than a loincloth or some simple covering over his loincloth. He should carry no more than his staff and water pot. Giving up all violence to living creatures, he should become subdued in functions of his body, mind, and speech. He should remain detached and fixed on the self and travel alone to such pure places as the mountains, rivers, and forest. Thus engaged, he should remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead and dwell in a place that is fearless and not heavily populated. So anyway, these are the injunctions about a sannyasi. Actually, after getting sannyas, I asked Prabhupada, why don't we do all that? Then Prabhupada told me, our sannyas is different. That is not the sannyas that we accept. Our sannyas is for the sake of preaching. And then Prabhupada explained that the sannyas order that we are following in ISKCON, which was actually established by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is simply to commit oneself completely in serving the Lord and spreading His glory. We have, our sannyas is called Tri Danda. These three dandas signify body, mind, and words. A sannyasi's body is completely dedicated to service, to serve Krishna. His mind is completely dedicated to remember Krishna all the time, and his speech is completely dedicated to glorify Krishna or spread Krishna consciousness. That is the sannyas that we are following in ISKCON. And Enor Prabhupada pointed out that in order to do that, whatever is necessary, we accept it. actually this instruction of Uddhav, Krishna also mentions about the sannyas order. This order that we are following. I don't know whether I'll be able to go that far because tomorrow is going to be the last class. Anyway, I'll briefly mention that. There was a Brahmana in Avantipur. Avanti, with a lot of pride I can say, is Ujjain. So this Avanti Brahmana, he was a very rich man, but he was a miser. All he cared about is just to accumulate money. And this money he would not spend for his family members or even for himself. He was such a miser. And as a result of that, his family members and his servants were quite disgusted with him. And eventually, this Brahmana lost all his money. So when he lost his money, then his family members started to treat him so badly that they eventually kicked him out of the house. So that time, this Brahmana realized that all the relationships in the material nature are simply based on financial dealings, money. And then he considered that actually the ultimate goal of life is to take shelter of Mukunda. And he renounced everything and accepted sannyas order. And when he was traveling, he was singing a song. That song is Etam sa asthaya paratmanishtham adhasitang purvatamir mahadvi aham tarishyami duranta parang tamo mukundang hri nishevaya. So now I have taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I have become fixed up on my spiritual goal by taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The path that has been shown by the previous Mahatmas, the personalities from the past. They have taken shelter of Krishna and rejected everything, and this is how they have accepted the spiritual path. Purvatamaid Mahadbhi. And following that path, I will overcome the insurmountable ocean of material nature simply by taking shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda. Tamo Mukundangri Nishevaya. So that is our, Prabhupada pointed out, that is the spirit of our sannyas order. The purpose of our sannyas is to simply take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. And in this way, by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, we will overcome, we will surmount, we will surpass the insurmountable ocean of material nature. So that is the order of sannyas that we are following in ISKCON. Now this morning we also discussed about Paramahamsa. Yesterday we discussed about Paramahamsa Avadhuta. So here is the anecdote of an avadhuta, or qualification of an avadhuta, the characteristic of avadhuta described. A Paramahamsa, okay, now here we can also consider that Paramahamsa is a sannyas stage, the highest stage of sannyas. Sannyas has 4 stages: Utichak, Bahudak, Paribrajak, Paramahamsa. Kutichak is the first stage when one takes sannyas but lives near his house, and sometimes his family members bring some food for him. Then the next stage, he goes out, begs from door to door, and that's how he maintains himself. And then he wanders from one place to another, preaching Krishna consciousness, Paribrajak. And then Paramahamsa, he is beyond these material modes. He is situated in the transcendental nature. So these are the 4 stages of sannyas. The ultimate stage of sannyas is Paramahamsa. A Paramahamsa is not under the control of injunctions and prohibitions. Rules and regulations don't apply to the Paramahamsas. They don't act according to the rules and regulations. Because we can consider rules and regulations are meant to take us out of the material nature into the spiritual nature. So when one is situated on the spiritual nature, he doesn't need to follow the rules and regulations. Rather, he behaves on the spiritual platform, the pure spiritual platform. But then again, yesterday I also mentioned, in response to somebody's question, that like a personality like Srila Prabhupada, the Paramahamsa, he comes down to the Madhyamadikar platform to preach. While preaching, yes, we have to follow the rules and regulations. Otherwise, what example will set? And that is why Paramahamsas cannot preach. They are too far out. So their activities are completely unpredictable. Nityati gayanti hashatatha lokabhajya. He sometimes dances, he sometimes cries, he sometimes rolls on the ground. Sometimes he laughs without any consideration of what people are thinking about him. Lokabhajya. What people are thinking about him is no consideration. He is simply acting in a way out of his intense loving exchange with Krishna. That is how he acts. That is a Paramahamsa stage. A Paramahamsa is not under the control of injunctions and prohibitions. He is a devotee of the Supreme Lord, detached from external sense gratification and completely free from desire for even such subtle gratificatory goals as liberation. He is even beyond liberation. He doesn't even care for liberation. He is expert in discrimination and just like a simple child. In one hand, he is an expert in making discrimination, and at the same time, he is simple as a child. He is free from concepts of pride and insult. Although actually competent, he wanders about like a dull person. And although most learned, he engages himself like an insane fool in incoherent speech. So, although he is the most learned, he acts like a fool. Although he is most competent, he wanders about like a dull person. And although he is most learned, and he behaves like an insane fool in incoherent speech. Although actually fixed in the Vedas, he behaves in an unordered fashion. His life is completely fixed on the Vedic wisdom, the Vedas. But he is behaving as if he is not at all concerned about that. And unordered fashion. He tolerates the evil words of others and never shows contempt for anyone else. He avoids acting as an enemy or vainly indulging in argument. He sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all creatures and also all living beings within the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although he has to make some effort to find food for maintaining his body, he does not become joyful when he finds something, nor does he become depressed when not finding anything. Just like the Supreme Personality of Godhead also is not at all subject to the Vedic orders or prohibition, by his own free will executes various prescribed duties. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead doesn't have to act according to the rules and regulations of the scriptures or following the prescribed duties, but still this Paramhamsa does that. Just as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does. The Supreme Lord himself, although not at all subject to the Vedic orders and prohibitions, by his own free will executes various prescribed duties. Similarly, the Paramhamsa, even while on the platform of freedom from subjugation to Vedic rules and prohibitions, carries out various duties. Another wonderful example of a Paramhamsa is Jara Bharat. Jara Bharat. Jara means retarded. Apparently it looked like he is a retarded. But he was a pure devotee. In his previous life, he was King Bharat, ruler of the entire earth planet. He left everything, went to the forest on the bank of the Gandaki river. And there he became attached to a deer. As a king, he gave up his kingdom, he gave up his wife, children, everything. But eventually he just became attached to a deer. And due to his attachment to that deer, when he left his body, he got the body of a deer. But although he was in a deer's body, he was a Jati Smar. He remembered his past life. In a body of a deer, but his consciousness is still elevated, did not deteriorate. And therefore, even as a deer, he did not want to become entangled. He left his family, deer family. He went to an ashram. And he used to stay near the ashram, and when the sadhus would discuss about Krishna consciousness, Krishna Katha, he would sit there and attentively listen. Even as a deer, he was fully Krishna conscious. And then, in his next life, he was born in a Brahmana family, exalted Brahmana family. But he started to behave like a retarded child because he didn't want to develop any attachment. So that's another example of an avadhuta. Although he is most exalted, but his behavior was like a retarded person. So much so that his brothers even cheated him. That's what he wanted, not to develop any attachment to anyone. If he was a bright, smart individual, very successful in life, then so many people would have become attached to him. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that he did not want to pursue his educational career. He dropped out actually. Probably he was one of the first dropouts. Everything begins in India. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and why did he do that? Because he mentioned that if he was very successful in life, then there will be pressure to pursue materialistic goal. There will be pressure but if he was good for nothing, then no one will put pressure. If he's very successful, so many fathers-in-laws will come with the proposals for their daughters. But if he's not successful, nobody will come to him. So this is how sometimes the exalted devotees voluntarily do not pursue a materialistic way of life. Do not endeavor for material success. So here Jarabharata's attitude was something like that. Like, let me just be completely useless. The only person who was attached to him was his father. And his father actually used to feel bad that my son born in a Brahmana family and he can't even pronounce a mantra. What a disgrace. He tried to make him chant some mantra. But he will pretend as if he can't even pronounce the Sanskrit words. But when the father died, his brothers cheated him of the inheritance. And not only that, they started to engage him in all kinds of menial work. And not only his brothers and sisters-in-law, but even the neighbors used to take advantage of him. Because everybody thought that this character is a dodo. So let's use him for all kinds of jobs, heavy work and things. And that's what actually they were doing. Sometimes they engaged him in guarding the field at night, because wild animals come and destroy the crop at times. So there is a need for someone to stay in the field to drive the animals. How do they do that? They actually take some metal and they shake it like a bell. And it would ring, or they would have some kind of metal piece and they would beat it and the animals will run away. So Jarabharata was doing that. And in the meantime, some dacoits, they were looking for someone to offer in sacrifice to goddess Kali. And they were looking for, actually they had somebody, but that they got a person to sacrifice to Kali, but somehow that person escaped. Now it's a time to worship Kali, and they couldn't find any. They have to find somebody, and they found Jarabharata in the middle of the field. So they said, okay, let's take him. So they took him. Jarabharata didn't protest. Okay, if that is what Kali, that is what Lord wants, let it be. But then, you all know what happened. They bathed Jarabharata, decorated him with red hibiscus flowers. Hibiscus flowers, red hibiscus flowers are very dear to Kali. Just as Tulasi is dear to Krishna, bay leaves is dear to Lord Shiva, hibiscus is dear to Kali. And so they put that hibiscus garland on his neck. And as they were about to chop his head off, Kali couldn't tolerate that. She just appeared, piercing her murti. And she picked up that chopper with which they were about to sacrifice Jara Bharat. And with that chopper, she started to kill those dacoits. So that is how a pure devotee is protected by the Lord. Pure devotee is completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Maro bhi rakho bhi jo ichha tohara. Whether you want to protect me or whether you want to kill me, it's entirely up to you. Jo ichha tohara, whatever your desire. Nitya dasa prati tua adhikara. You have the complete right over your eternal servant. A person who desires his own best interest should take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Again, we are coming back to that point. In whichever order of life we are in, especially Brahmana, Kshatriya and Vaishya, should take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Because the spiritual master imparts the spiritual knowledge. Dibbo Gyan, Hriday Prakashita. The transcendental knowledge is revealed in the heart by the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master. So time and time again it has been pointed out in the scriptures, even in Uddhav Gita, Krishna's instruction. We came across this point yesterday. Krishna is saying that when one becomes serious about spiritual life, he must surrender to a bona fide spiritual master. Again, Krishna is pointing out, for anyone who is interested in spiritual life must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Filling his mind with faith, keeping free from enviousness, and remaining fixed in devotion, the disciple should serve the spiritual master, whom he should regard as non-different from the Supreme Lord. Non-different from the Supreme Lord. When Prabhupada was about to give initiation to a first group of devotees in New York, Prabhupada mentioned that to them. The spiritual master should be treated as good as God. And some of the devotees became quite, the expression they used was freaked out. They became very perturbed. What Swamiji is saying is we have to treat him like God. But then again, it was Kirtananda Swami who actually explained to them that he is not saying that you should treat him as God, but as good as God. And then Prabhupada many times explained what it means. Like an agent. When you are seeing an agent, don't you see the principle through him? Like for example, you go to, like you see many like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Toyota. So you go to buy a car. Then when you walk into that, Don't you think that you have come to Mercedes-Benz? Because he's an agent. The person who set up that is not Mercedes-Benz, but he's delivering Mercedes-Benz goods. So because the spiritual master is giving Krishna, because he is the representative of Krishna, because he is agent of Krishna, therefore he should be seen as non-different from Krishna. Meaning, what I want from Krishna, I can get here. To buy Mercedes-Benz, if you don't have to go to Stuttgart, in Mercedes-Benz factory in Germany. And sitting in Port Royal, sitting in Gita Nagari, you can walk into a Mercedes-Benz showroom and you can get Mercedes-Benz car. Now this showroom is run by an agent. So that is the relationship between Krishna and a spiritual master who is representing Krishna. For a brahmachari, the primary duty is service to the spiritual master. The main duties of a householder are protection of living beings and sacrifice. A householder's business is to give protection to all living beings. Prabhupada said that even the animals in the house, not only the domestic animals, even the animals in the vicinity of the house or in the precinct of the house should be treated by or taken care of by a householder. Prabhupada said, in the house, in that house area, if there is a snake, the householder should take care of the snake also. Must take care that the snake is properly fed. So that is how broad-minded the Vedic culture is. But we can see, as opposed to that, what's today's culture? Even the domestic animal, like a cow, who gave so much milk, gave so much, so many facilities, as soon as she is dry, send her to the slaughterhouse. No compassion, no love, no. Actually, what happened in today's world? All the finer feelings have been lost because of meat eating and intoxication. Intoxication kills the finer feelings. And that's what makes people so cruel. And so that is how unfortunate the world has become today. So different duties of different orders have been prescribed in this way by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One acquires firm devotion for the Supreme Lord by always rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead through one's own particular prescribed duty, by not engaging in worship of any other personalities, and also by thinking of all creatures as the place of residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One must see that every body is a place of residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Lord is there in their hearts. Here is the Lord in that body. So I must treat Him accordingly. So more we develop that consciousness, more we'll make spiritual advancement. Or vice versa. The more we make spiritual advancement, the more we will see the residence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that person. Sarva bhuteshu ja pashyet bhagavad bhavam atmana. In every living entity, he sees the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so now we are left with about half an hour. And okay, does anybody have any question? Yes.
Thanks for that. I personally learned a lot, and thanks a lot for the class. My question is that, as I understand that when a person dies, even Krishna in his mind, before he goes to Sri Krishna's Leela, is a 13 days lapse where something happens to his soul before he goes back to Godhead.
Who said that?
I was watching a program, possibly in
Mayapur TV, I don't think so.
So there's a
Anyway, his point is, I got your point. Let me just. That when one leaves his body, after 13 days, he goes to Krishna's pastimes. Therefore my question is, where did you get that? He said Mayapur TV. I don't think, because that is not right. People, those who are materially attached, after leaving their body, they can't really go ahead to the next destination. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai. And they remain attached in the subtle body to the gross body. The subtle body remains attached to the gross body. The more attached one is, longer time it takes him to become free. Therefore, the Sudra's Shraddha ceremony takes after 1 month. And generally the Brahmana's Shraddha ceremony takes after 13 days, after 12 days, on the 13th day. Shraddha ceremony, they make arrangement for help him to his next destination. Right? This can be Jamalaya also. And most of the people goes to Jamalaya after 13 days. But the devotees, generally their Shraddha takes place after 3 days, because they don't have that kind of attachment. Whether one will go back to Godhead and all, that needs a proper preparation. Unless one is completely purified, he won't be able to go back to Godhead. Not that just after death everybody goes to Godhead. Yeah. So, and a pure devotee may go back to Godhead straight away. Because he is already purified. As I mentioned the other day, a pure devotee is a person who is a pure spirit soul dwelling in this material body. That stage is called Jivan Mukta stage. So when he leaves his body after death, then he goes back to the spiritual sky. Yes? Ketlida?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very much against Mayavad. Still he accepted sannyas, Diksha from a Mayavad, that is
Yes. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas in Mayavad order because those days the sannyas order meant in that order. That is in the Shankaracharya Sampradaya. Mahaprabhu took order because that was the custom those days. Right? But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his teachings, are defeating Mayavad philosophy. That reminds me of one point also. I notice some of you have shaved head but no sikha. You know what shaved head, no sikha mean? Shaved head, no Sikha means Mayavadi. And Mayavadi, our attitude, you know what's our attitude towards the Mayavadi? Prabhupada said that a Vaishnava's attitude towards the Mayavadi is that when you see him, with your clothes, go into the water and take a bath. So that is our attitude towards the Mayavadi. So, whenever you shave your head, make it a point to keep a Sikha. And I tell you, it's becoming a fashion nowadays. You see, there was a time nobody thought of shaving his head. Especially in the Western world, nobody shaved his head. Only ISKCON started the trend. Even the gurus and sadhus who came from India, they all were long-haired hippies. Only ISKCON introduced this culture of shaving head. And now you see so many people are shaved head. Especially when I go to the airport, I am amazed to see so many people have shaved head. So ISKCON did it, it has become a trend. It has become a fashion. Now you keep your Sikha, that will also become a fashion. You will see everybody is keeping Sikha. So don't be afraid or ashamed to keep Sikha. You looked strange when you had shaved head. But now people don't think that shaved head is strange sight. Similarly, you may think, oh, Sikha will be strange. No, they will accept it and that will become a trend. And most important thing is don't be ashamed of what you are doing. Because what you are doing is the best possible thing that anybody can do. So why should you be embarrassed? And during Prabhupada's time, everybody had shaved head. If the growth was more than 2 weeks, Prabhupada said, this is your hippie mentality coming out. Just 2 weeks growth. Prabhupada said, it's a tendency to keep long hair. ISKCON means Vaishnava. Vaishnava means shaved head. Prabhupada said, either shaved head or no care for hair. Let it become matted hair. Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned that there are 4 stages of life. In the 3rd quarter of the life, one should take Manapashya. But these days, only at the end of 2nd quarter, people are getting children. And actually, like the 3rd quarter, children grow up and get married. So what is your advice for that?
2nd quarter?
And since like marriage happened at 35 and children are around 40, so until 65 or have responsibility for your children.
Well, no comment. Jagannath?
So in America these days, the tough guys are very often bullies. There's this ethos in the air of might is right. And Kshatriyas, I always understood to be very noble. Aside from the whole concept of women as property, where is the nobility of in taking another's property, or just taking a woman and say like, you modern got to go for me first. And then also I've come across things where it said that Kshatriyas also are hunters and meat eaters and gamblers. How unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, meat eating is allowed for Kshatriyas, but gambling in the age of Kali is forbidden. Right? And besides that, in this present structure, in the democratic structure, there is no room for a Kshatriya. You see, Kshatriya will have his own kingdom and Kshatriya will have his own law. right? That law, of course, not his own law. It will be ordained by Manu Samhita. So point is that in this age, that is the most difficult thing to achieve, to establish the Kshatriya order. They are powerful, no doubt, and they want what they want. They get what they want. But at the same time, they're guided by the Brahmanas. The Kshatriya culture got destroyed because first of all, the Brahmanas became corrupt. And when the Kshatriyas lost their respect for the Brahmanas, they didn't want to take their advice. And besides that, the Brahmanas were not qualified to give the proper guidance to the Kshatriyas. So when the Kshatriyas became independent, without the guidance of the Brahmanas, then only the trouble started in the Vedic culture. Prabhupada pointed out that since time immemorial, India had been ruling over the whole world, the Indian kings. And nobody actually ever been able to enter into India. No invader has been able to enter into India because the Indian warriors, Kshatriyas, were so powerful. It's only about 1,000 years ago that the invaders entered into India. Why? Because the Kshatriyas became weak. And then what happened? Gradually foreign rule came, invaders came, they took over. And now India is the biggest democracy. And Prabhupada said democracy means demon crazy. And democracy means, like just consider, democracy means of the people, for the people, by the people. Right? Now people, mass is ignorant. How the ignorant mass can elect a wise leader? And in this society, in democratic society, what happens? Nobody has the right to be on his own. Everybody has to fit into the structure of democracy. Of the people, for the people, and so forth. Therefore, in order for Varnashram Dharma to establish Varnashram Dharma, we have to properly establish Varnashram Dharma. We have to first get rid of democracy. In Varnashram Dharma, there is a specific order. The Kshatriyas are ruling, not by the people, by election, by his power, physical and military power. A king establishes his kingdom. And he is susceptible to be attacked by other kings. And if other more powerful king comes, then he'll take over his kingdom. So in this way, the most powerful king rules over the earth planet, where all the other kings are subordinate to him. Right? Now tell me, in democracy, is there any room for that? No. In democratic world, there is no room for it. We are seeing how democracy is spreading. But Varnashram does not promote democracy. Varnashram promotes monarchy. Right? And you know what are the semblance of Kshatriyas in this world today? The mafias are the only Kshatriyas. And look at their way of behaving. You surrender to me, I'll give you protection. I mean the real mafias, the good mafias, the Godfather. So that is the mood of a Kshatriya. Whoever surrenders unto him, okay, you are my man, I'll give you all protection. But if somebody comes up with that attitude, what will happen? This system will immediately crush him. He has to function outside the law. But a real Kshatriya will take over, establish his kingdom, set up his ministers, guided by his spiritual master, and that's how he'll rule over the kingdom. That is Varnashram. All right? Yes?
So the example of taking the woman, that's an example of corrupted Kshatriya or not?
That, you see, when that is the standard, then it's all right. You know, if the father says that my daughter has the freedom to select her own husband, he invites all the kings. He invites the kings. Not that someone surreptitiously comes and steals his daughter. Like, there's a big assembly. And all the kings have assembled there. Now it is the choice of the princess whom she wants to select. And the Kshatriya spirit is like that. If somebody takes away something that I wanted, I will try to stop him. And there was a fight. Okay, yeah.
After the death, like whatever you have in your mind at the last moment of passing away, you get another birth. But when somebody dies, in India we have Garuda Puran, and
I didn't hear the last word you said. Yeah.
see, there is Shad ceremony,
Shad ceremony. Yeah. Okay.
like 13 days, that's a custom, and at that time Garuda Puran is read. And like you were saying, that not everybody will go to Golok, they will go to Yamaraj. So, on one hand, Thakur says that another room is ready to receive that person according to his last wish. So, I was thinking it's not...
Okay, good point. Okay, I got your point. So one will get his body according to his last thought. What will be his last thought? His last thought will be where his deepest attachment is. You asked a question, let me answer it. His last thought is going to be where his deepest attachment is. And then accordingly the nature will make arrangements to prepare him for the next body. It is not that immediately after death one gets a new body. He gets prepared for that body. In most cases, as I said, say for example, somebody behaved like a pig throughout his life. Right? He is now prepared to get a pig's body. So then he is taken to Jamalaya. And in Jamalaya he is subjected to various kind of treatment. One of the treatment is, say for example, he is plunged into a pool of stool. Yes. And naturally it's disgusting. But eventually he begins to like the stool. He likes stool. He began to like it. Now he is ready for a pig's body. He gets a pig's body, he is placed in a proper, appropriate womb, he comes out with a pig's body, and all he does, he looks for stool everywhere. So this is how, according to the subtle body, nature shapes him. Yes? Samuel. Yeah, please.
Two questions that are related. One is, you were mentioning in Satya Yuga that the only class is Hamsa, or pure devotion to Krishna. And I was wondering, because we come to this material world to turn away from Krishna, how is it that these living entities immediately they come and they're willing to serve Krishna?
Okay. Did everybody hear the question? It is not that like everybody is born in Satyuga. Right? the individuals who have that kind of mentality, only they are born in Satyuga. You get the point? There are innumerable souls with various types of propensities. Now some are very exalted, some are very spiritually elevated, some are very spiritually devoted to Krishna. Those souls get a chance to be born in Satyuga. Similarly, those who are extremely fallen, they get a chance to be born in Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is a place when that is the time for the most fallen living entities. But fortunately, these most fallen living entities get an opportunity to become elevated to the highest spiritual destination. That is the unique opportunity for the age of Kali.
My second question is, how is it that there's an unlimited supply of living entities in this world?
Unlimited?
Like a continuous stream of people coming through this material world. Is it because there's a continuous, Krishna continues to create living entities, or is it...
To begin with, living entities are innumerable. What to speak of living entities? Even Krishna's incarnations are innumerable. Right? If Krishna is so innumerable, can you imagine what is the condition of living entities? So it is innumerable. Right? And the living entities they are from spiritual sky. They are not generated in the material nature. But what actually happens, it is due to the glance of the Supreme Lord, glance of Mahavishnu, the material nature becomes activated. And it is through his glance the living entities come to the material nature. And when he withdraws his glance, all the living entities goes back to him. But they go back to him in an unconscious state. Like asleep. They are there, but they are fast asleep. So that is the state. Although they went to Mahavishnu, but they are not aware that they are in Mahavishnu. Yes, you have a question? Acha, yeah. Mother, I'll take your question afterwards. Mother Krishna Priya.
So, actually today, after the afternoon class, we were discussing the topic, and as we've been speaking, devotional service is meant to be pure, loving, unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And yet there seems to be a phenomenon that we find at times the temples are short-handed, there's not many devotees, and although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is manifest in this beautiful Archvigraha form, we find at times that there's quarreling amongst the devotees and people being resentful, and this is not engaging with love and devotion. So how should this be dealt with, this phenomenon?
Yeah, as individuals, we have the facility, we have the option how we are going to behave. Lord is here. Now the question is whether we'll look at him or look away from him. That prerogative we have. Now when we recognize that he is here and we should serve him, then we get an opportunity to serve him. And that's one consideration. The other consideration is, you see, when a great spiritual personality comes, he creates that spiritual tidal wave. And as a result of that, so many people become attracted. For example, during Prabhupada's time, so many devotees became attracted. It is because the tidal wave that Prabhupada created. But after Prabhupada's disappearance, gradually it faded away. But then again, it is coming up. Gradually it's coming up. Especially in those countries where Krishna consciousness was not there, where we could not go, like the communist countries and so forth. Krishna consciousness is flourishing there so wonderfully. And so we are going through a phase, right? The movement takes place in wave. Wave means going up, coming down. So this movement also is going like that. Went up, it came down, it'll go up again. Go up again. And I'm sure Krishna will make the arrangements. And the thing is, again, the temples will become so full. Then we'll feel that one temple is not good enough. We will need so many more temples.
So we just have to try to set an example ourselves.
Is all we can do is
Just try to set an example by our own activities.
By our own example? Yeah, like senior devotees have to take up the responsibility to motivate others and become exemplary. And that's how this movement is going to grow. And we see a senior, exalted devotee comes, people become attracted. And similarly, when they go, there is a void created. That spirit goes away. So, but the thing is that we have to learn to overcome these possibilities by everybody making an endeavor to become advanced. We should not think, okay, the senior devotees will become advanced and let me be just neophyte. No, we should make an endeavor. Everybody should make an endeavor to become advanced. Especially, that's why it's important that we attract the youth. Because the future, the real hope lies with the youth. They are the ones who are full of spirit, full of enthusiasm. And they are the ones who can commit for a cause. When you become old, then we don't have the vitality and enthusiasm. Thank you. Yes, she has a question.
How to find the balance, Maharaj, between taking time for hearing, chanting, studying, and for practical devotional service, since there's always things to do and we could be always engaged in practical service at the same time, we need to engage in hearing and chanting, which you were emphasizing. Because sometimes I see that there's devotees who choose to go and do something instead of taking advantage of hearing. So it seems like the balance is different for everybody. So what would be the signs, symptoms that we are out of balance?
Out of?
Out of the balance between hearing, chanting, or sadhana and practical devotions.
What's the practical balance of individually becoming engaged in serving and hearing and chanting? I guess that will depend upon the individuals. They have to set the balance, how to do it, right? And especially, you see, when devotees are situated in their respective setups, like when they're householders. It's easy when all are brahmacharis and living in the temple. Then you can set the standard. 4:30 Mangal Arati. If you don't come to Mangal Arati, no breakfast. But you can't tell that to your householder who is living in his house. You get the point? They have to set their own standard, how they want to follow. But I generally advise that the priority should be first to chant your rounds. Priority should be chanting your rounds. I notice many a times the householders are so caught up with the deity worship that they don't have the time to chant their rounds. In this age, deity worship is not the process. Chanting the holy name of the Lord is the process. That's what one should be very, very careful about. Chant your rounds first. Then if you have time, then you can do deity worship. Otherwise, go to the temple and worship the deities. The Brahmanas are doing that already. You don't have to have a separate deity worship standard. Go to the temple. That's what Prabhupada used to say. If you want to have your own deities, then why am I establishing these temples? That means you will become so busy with your own deities that you won't have any time to serve the deities in the temple. So first priority is chanting. And if you ask me, then I'll say the next priority will be reading Prabhupada's books. And then you can decide what you want to do with the time that you have. Not that, oh, I'm too busy with my deity worships and I can't chant 16 rounds, although I'm initiated. No, that's not acceptable. Okay, Hare Krishna. Okay, last question.
Maharaj, can you just clarify what you said? I don't think I heard. You said chanting japa first, deity worship second, is that what you said?
No, reading Prabhupada's books.
Oh, thank you.
Reading Prabhupada's books is the second priority. And then you decide what you want to do with your time. And I know it's difficult, when both husband and wife are working. It's very difficult to maintain a proper spiritual standard. And that's why my thing is that first you just finish your rounds. Yes, Prema Sindhu? You have a question? I'll take your question next. Let me.
So my question is regarding Chanakya Pandit. He's a Brahmana, and as you were mentioning that he was the advisor. Is he really a pure devotee like a Vaishnava, or because Prabhupada quotes him many times in the purports. So,
No, Chanakya won't be considered as a pure devotee. He's a Brahmana. He's a Brahmana. In the first class Brahman, no doubt. But most probably he is, at least the way I know, or where my understanding goes, he was not a devotee as such. Pure devotee as such. A pure devotee would establish Krishna consciousness. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki. That gentleman has a question. Let's take that question and let's end that. Can you come forward and take the mic? Where are you from? I'm seeing you for the first time. Huh?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh, Baltimore. Okay, very good.
Okay, this is a little confusing to me myself, the question. The question is about karma. As you said, that Paramatma resides in everybody's heart, so we should respect everybody. And also you said, if the home where the Paramatma is residing is gone bad, then either you fix it or you should...
What happened if Paramatma goes bad means?
Beg your pardon?
No, what do you say, Paramatma?
Paramatma resides in everybody's body,
Right,
so
okay.
we should respect everybody.
Yeah,
You said that.
yeah.
Also you said about the house, you get...
That is, I'm talking about that attitude is a higher stage
Right.
of a devotion.
Right. The question I have is, if Paramatma is in everybody's body, and the body is having problems, and if I try to help that body in respect of food, or clothing, or medical, then you call it as a karma. But if I go through the ISKCON, same thing, then it's not called karma. If that is the situation, now at least 20% of the people in the world are hungry. All the people in the charity world will stop giving charity. Do you think ISKCON will be able to handle all those people? And why, if I do some charity work, it's called karma?
So what's your point actually?
My point is that I have been stopped by ISKCON devotees as well as the gurus that don't do any charity work because that's the action will cause you reaction. So you give all your, whatever you want to do is give to ISKCON and let them handle the situation.
Okay, if you want to do it, just go ahead and do it.
No, but
If you want to do charity,
there is no.
the point is, what ISKCON devotees said is correct. It's a matter of whether you understood the point or not.
No.
First you listen. I heard your question. Now let me answer that.
That's right.
And listen carefully. First you sit down and then I'll answer you. Say for example, you give somebody some money and he goes out and eats meat. Is that a sinful action?
But you don't know he's going to go and eat meat.
I'm saying if he does.
You're going to give him.
Look, I don't want to get into an argument. I'm simply trying to answer your question.
I'm going to listen, you know.
Yeah, so listen carefully. If you give somebody some facility and he goes out and does something wrong, which is sinful, because you have assisted him in doing that, you become responsible for that to some extent, not to a full extent. That is the point the ISKCON devotees are trying to tell you. And if they say that if you want to do charity work, do it through ISKCON, because ISKCON is rendering all the activities in promoting Krishna consciousness. So when you assist the purpose of ISKCON, promoting Krishna consciousness, that good action that is being performed, you will get the benefit for that. So now it's up to you to decide whether you want to follow ISKCON's advice or when you want to follow your own decision. The choice is yours. Thank you very much.
महाराज की